A very good morning. Today is 3rd July 2020. There are 4 articles of the Hindu editorial page. The first article is on India's torture culture needs to end now. This is regarding the dear custodial death in Tamil Nadu. Only the people, including the bar, media, civil society and student groups can rise up against torture practices. The second article is on the uncertain world, a seat at a global high table. That's on counter-terrorism will be only one of the highest Indian priorities as a non-permanent member of UN Security Council. The third article is on monitoring of non-COVID-19 diseases, staying alert. The focus on COVID-19 shouldn't come at the expense of monitoring other diseases. The final article is on the contraction of economy, on slowing economy. As the output and demand is slow, India must retain twin focus on pandemic and economy. If you're first to my channel, I request you all to subscribe so that you cannot miss any further updates. I am Prashant. I welcome you all to Wifi study Karo. This is the cartoon of the day. As we can see that by Prime Minister announcement that every household will get food grains, but actually the scenario is that the first come is getting more, but the last one who is at the rare end is not getting enough food grains. That picture depicts. The first article is on the India's torture culture needs to end with the hashtag end torture today is viral today. By now everyone has heard the tragic death of P. Jayaraj and J. Benix, a father-son duo in a small town of Thoothukudi. Jayaraj, a 58-year-old, was arrested by the police following an altercation with them on keeping his son's mobile phone shop open in a violation of lockdown rules. After Benix was also taken into custody and they were mercilessly thrashed to death. Being found guilty of the offence of keeping a shop open during the lockdown would have ordinarily granted Jayaraj and Benix a maximum of only 3 months of imprisonment. The story sadly does not end with the police alone. Before the two men died in a court complex mechanically seems to have granted without ever seeing that the two men or seeming that to the questions the rationality of the remand. The series of events starting with the cruel lockdown, enforcement methods and concluding with the utterly gruesome and entirely avoidable deaths is a sign that we are living in a completely broken system of law enforcement. And endemic is to the police culture. The Tamil Nadu police have acquired a notoriety over the decades for employing torturous methods of law enforcement. During the tenure of Chief Justice of Madras High Court, several cases in this regard were brought to the court, but this issue is not restricted to the Tamil Nadu alone. Torture is in fact an integral part of police culture all over the country. Indeed, it would be not too amiss to argue that this culture in India today is reminiscent of the brutality of colonial police forces that we are seen to forget. Official data also accept that the police torture is reality, but the quality of such data is always suspect. The pervasiveness of police torture is best understood in compelling case found in the reports made by NGOs and observers over the years, including the Asian Center for Human Rights, Amnesty International and People's Union for Democratic Rights. The data on torture shown that it is only the integral part of India's policing culture. In some investigations, such as terror case, it is also treated as a centerpiece. The fact is that the current laws facilitate such torture, such as through admissibility of confessions as evidence under the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act and the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which continues refurbished as a Maharashtra Control of Organized Crime Act. Unfortunately, the policing has also not mainstreamed the upgrade to newer technologies like DNA analysis, which can directly impact law enforcement practices. What some have labeled as India's public secret is tip-topped around the international arena. The official position on the state-sponsored and state-endorsed torture can be seen in 2017 quote by the India's then Attorney General in his opening speech in Geneva in country's Universal Periodic Review at the United Nations Human Rights Council. The Attorney General of India, Gandhi and Buddha, stating that India believes in peace, non-violence, and upholding human dignity. As such, the concept of torture is completely aligned to our culture, and it has no place in the governance of the nation. This would be a textbook example of hypocrisy if ever. Undoubtedly, the offending officers in Thothukudi case are being prosecuted, and some compensation will also be paid to the victims' families. But such pernicious action is not what is needed. What we really need is a recognition that the torture is endemic and the system is problematic, and the only answer lies in stringent legal framework that is aligned with and committed to the principles of international law under the UN Convention Against Torture, that is UNCAT, to which India had been signatory since 1997, and a watertight enforcement mechanism that deters such practices. Supreme Court on torture. Even before India signed UNCAT, that is UN Convention Against Torture, our Supreme Court had already brought about a glorious jurisprudence highlighting that many problems with the country's torture culture. In some cases, the state versus the Haryana, the court was deeply disturbed by the diabolical recurrence of police torture, resulting in a terrible scars in the minds of common citizens that their lives and liberty are under new peril, which were the guardians of the law gore human rights to death. These sentiments were revisited in some of the cases where the court condemned cruelty and torture as a violation of Article 21. The interpretation of Article 21 is a consistent that the principle contained the UNCAT, and the UNCAT aims to prevent torture and other acts of cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment around the world. Although India signed UNCAT in 1997, it is yet to ratify it. In 2010, a weak Prevention of Torture Bill was passed by the Lok Sabha, and Rajya Sabha later sent it to the Select Committee for review in alignment with UNCAT. The author of this article is a retired judge of Madras High Court, also appeared before this committee in 2010 after the retirement from judicial office. Says that the committee recommended law submitted in 2012 never fructified, as then the UPA government allowed the bill to lapse. In 2016, the Ashwini Kumari, a senior advocate from former Union Ministry of Law, sought to enactment of the torture law via Supreme Court petition. By 2017, the Law Commission has submitted a 273rd report of the accompanying draft torture law, but the Supreme Court dismissed the petition on the grounds that the government cannot be compelled to make the law as mandamus. Treaty ratification was a political decision, and that it was a policy matter. A second petition on the issue filed by Mr. Kumar was also met to same fate as the first one. These rejections were a sign that Supreme Court turning its back on its glorious jurisprudence and its effort to aid lawmaking in the past, whether in using the convention or elimination of forms of discrimination against women, to reform the law around workplace sexual harassment or customary international law in environmental cases, or the right to privacy. This long and varied list is revelatory of proactive court that sees itself as responsible for nudging Parliament into legislative action. Even with failings, the Commission's draft bill is better than not to have one at all. The version based on this draft was circulated to the state government for views, but nothing had come to in effect, and nothing is likely to either. This reluctance is arguably because of all governments appear to collectively agree that the police brutality is necessary evil to maintain law and order. #End torture today. Neither the Home Ministry nor the government is likely to take up the torture law. Indeed, this manner which the torture bill has been treated reversals or reveals a betrayal of the people of India by successive governments. There are opportunities of 23 years to enact this law of torture, but then have been studiously avoided. State consultations have also no meaning. It is evident that all governments enjoy the status quo, where the police are used as a tool for self-prevention or perseveration, as a disequilibrium is not politically desirable. A disheartening of this may seem all not lost, there is another much inspiration around us by days after George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis in US, where policemen held him about 8 minutes 46-second chokehold. That is, the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement emerged, with many Indians going or joining that too. The movement, led by the people, started a nation's debate in the US on policing, including radical reforms such as defunding and disarming the police. Arguably, we need a people's movement at home that will bring about the necessary legislative changes in the law commission has suggested, and that encourages institutions to end torture today. Only the people can raise up against these practices, just as they are doing in other parts of the world. As by the people, the author includes important stakeholders like bar, media, civil society and student groups. Each of these groups have relevant roles to play in bringing about the change in what we want to see. It is merely a matter of who decides to pick up the mantle first. Regarding the torture, how they can end this kind of torture by the police due to the custodial death of a Jew in Tamil Nadu. The second article is on the seat at global high table. India will back the United Nations Security Council, that is UNSC, for 2 years term beginning in January 1, 2020, at a critical time in the history of UN. It is also hoped by then the COVID-19 have subsidized our US president will have been elected, and the counters of the new world over may have emerged. India is serving the 8th time and had a record of contributing to some of the seminal resolutions of the UNSC. As a consequence of the long debate on the expansion of UNSC, many countries which have never served on the council have begun to claim their turn. Earlier, India, Japan, Pakistan and some other used to get elected more frequently compared to the retiring members. The newly elected members are more politically significant. India's reputation for taking balanced positions and consensus building will be welcomed by other members. All about the contest. The basic content or the contest was for non-permanent seats take place in respective regional group and their subgroups. Voting in General Assembly is to fulfill the requirement of countries having to secure 2/3 majority of the member state. If there is a regional endorsement, all countries except those with any grievance against the candidate vote for them and they sail through easily. But regional endorsement is becoming difficult as countries inscribe their names a year in advance, and those squatting countries have to be persuaded to vacate the place through various means. Last time it was Kazakhstan who was vacated and the place for India. This time it was Afghanistan. India could not have got the endorsement without such gestures from friendly countries. It must have taken some deft activity by our mission to accomplish these feats. Voting in General Assembly is not without its own excitement. The 2/3 majority is assured, but then the competition is to secure all voters cast. But no one gets that as a ballot is secret and adversaries may vote against the candidate. For instance, out of 192 votes cast, India got only 184. No one will ever know the 8 countries did not vote for India. But it is a matter of concern that there are so many countries with grievances against India. In order of the number of votes received by each one, the countries elected were Mexico, India, Norway, Ireland and Kenya. Since then, there was no endorsement of the African group. Kenya had also to go for second round against Djibouti. Kenya was in a favorite of the West, and Djibouti was supported by China and Islamic State. In Western European and other groups, Canada lost to Ireland in the contentions contest. One special feature of this year was the COVID-19 effect. Ambassadors were allowed to enter the General Assembly Hall or one-to-one bike to cast the ballots instead of simultaneously voting that usually takes place. The campaign was also unconventional. It took place through Zoom conversations and in the sharing of brochures and pamphlets rather than through meetings at bars and restaurants serving hate cuisine around the UN. The candidates may also have saved money, as this is normally an occasion of splurging. Though India's success was assured that the new permanent representative of India, T.S. Tirumurthy, who was a formidable reputation of multilateral skills, produced an imperative multimedia presentation with the memories of India's sterling role in the annals of UN. Asked for his reaction to the victory, he said, "In the COVID-19, the post for COVID world, India will continue to provide our leadership with a new orientation for a reformed multilateral system. How far an UN will be able to reform itself in a new situation which remains uncertain. The expected changes after 9/11 never materialized because of the vested interest and traditional positions. The UN did not succeed in neither defining terrorism or adopting the comprehensive convention of the international terrorism. Counter-terrorism will be only one of the highest priorities for India at UNSC. Permanent membership. India's election as a non-permanent member is by understandably ignited the hope that its quest for permanent membership of the Council may succeed. Nothing is far from the truth. Operating with these provisions of the Charter is one of the things, and seeking to amend the Charter to add new permanent members is quite another. The debate has thrown up many ideas, but till today, none of the proposals have been made. A possibility of securing two-thirds majority of General Assembly and the votes of 5 permanent members. It is fairly uncertain that no expansion of the permanent members will take place under the existing provisions of the Charter. We may blame the permanent members of being adamant about protecting their privileged positions, but the fact is that majority of UN members are against the privileges of the permanent members, particularly the veto. India's performance in a council may earn its respect, but it will not lead to evolution to the permanent membership as opposition of expansion, as India is not specified. India will have no high profile at the UN for the next 2 years, as the non-permanent members have collective veto over every resolution in the Council. Permanent members can prevent adoption and resolution by themselves, but they need at least 9 votes to get a resolution passed. India will also have to rare peep into the consultation chamber of UNSC, which is closed by the non-members of the Council. It is there to hard negotiations that takes place without any public record, characterized by arm twisting and threats of veto. The pressure of work of the machine will also increase because India will get involved in many issues in which it may not have any direct interest. Since India does not have to veto, it shall have a proceed cautiously, not to offend anyone, unless they should go against it when the matter of vital interest of country comes up in the Council. India's mission in New York has earned a reputation that it is next only to the permanent members of influence, but whether it will be able to deal with traditional challenges in novel ways will depend on turns and twists in the uncertain world. This is regarding a seat of global high table and how counter-terrorism will be helping of India's at highest priority as non-permanent member at UN Security Council. The next article is on monitoring non-COVID-19 diseases. The Integrated Disease Surveillance Program (IDSP), the backbone of India's disease monitoring network, is responsible for alerting the center and the wider world on weekly basis about the emergence of disease outbreaks, a surge in novel pathogens, the rate of spread of remedial action. On an average, there are about 30 to 40% such alerts. However, the advent of COVID-19 appears to have veiled the country from any other disease. For the last weekly report available at IDSP website is from the week of 12th March, that is March 16th to 22nd. It records a mere 6 outbreaks or disease alerts across the country. In the same week later, there are 17 alerts in 2018, and there were 28 in 2017, and there were 45 in the earliest. In the week 11 of this year, there were around 28 alerts, 12 of which were the COVID-19, and these corresponds to 110 cases of the disease which were reported in that week of March, from which the disease escalated. One way to understand the situation is that once COVID-19 was declared a pandemic and lockdown imposed, the IDSP2 went into a new normal with the movement of a standstill, hospitals shut, and only testing and treatment of COVID-19 available at government healthcare facilities. The reporting of these other diseases suffered. The neglect of other diseases have been independently borne out, and the instant by reduction in the notifications of fresh tuberculosis infection and a general decline in claims under the Ayushman Bharat Health Insurance Scheme. The other explanation is that akin to decline in the deaths from the accident, and the lockdown has contributed to decline in transmission of contagious diseases. Many of the outbreaks that are routinely reported involve pathogens contracted from contaminated water or those airborne that spread through social interaction. While the reasons of the decline could be deliberated upon, what is unacceptable is a lack of public updates since March 12th. The pandemic has taught the world that no modeling can quite forecast the spread of disease, and an affliction that may seem under control one week can quickly be threatening to next week. If the country has a policy decided to unlock and restore the pre-pandemic routines, then they should think also apply the routine surveillance for other diseases. The IDSP also faces a manpower crunch, and mirroring the experience of public health facilities in other countries is trying to recruit in the middle of the pandemic. It is debatable how usefully this would come to improve the COVID-19 surveillance, but it is essential in improving other surveillance as well as providing timely updates to the public and international health agencies. The pandemic needs a serious focus, but India cannot afford to ignore other killers. This is regarding how they should focus on other diseases in this pandemic situation so that they can control other diseases. Says Integrated Disease Surveillance Program is a backbone of India Disease Monitoring Network. The next article is on economic slowdown. Output in the 8 sectors in industry suffered overall contraction. The 8 sectors are coal, cement, steel, natural gas, refinery, crude oil experienced a substantial loss of production. In the month of May, shrinking 23.4% as a pandemic-induced lockdown kept large parts of economy shuttered. The Commerce Ministry provisional figures of the 8 but all posted decline in the production compared with the last year earlier, with the 6 sectors witnessing double-digit drop. Steel and cement were the worst hit, slumping to 48% and 22.2% respectively, as the construction activities and infrastructure projects remain mostly stalled. Refinery projects with the largest weight of index contributing to 28% contracted to 21% as curbs on vehicular movement stemmed demand for the automobile fuels, and the crude oil and natural gas continued their slide, adding to the problems of dogging India's hydrocarbon exploration and production industry. Coal production also fell to the second straight month, declining 14% as a lack of demand for electricity from the nation's factories depressed power production, as well the need for the key of thermal plant fuel. Output of electricity fell 15.6%, a slight improvement from April 23% slump, aided by partial easing of restrictions and the peak summer consumptions by households. The only silver lining came for the fertilizer industry as the production rose to 7.5%, reversing the slump seen in the preceding 2 months and signaling robust activity in the agriculture sector at the start of Kharif season. The finance minister had held on June 23rd cited a near doubling in fertilizer states in May as indicative of early green shoots of economic revival. A promising and early start to the year's monsoon bodes well for the crucial farm income dependent rural economy. The above average quantities and improved spatial distribution of rainfall in June have spurred a sharp jump in Kharif sowing, with the areas shown as June 26 more than a doubling compared with the year earlier in 315.6 lakh hectares. With the pandemic and lockdown have sent lakhs of people back to their rural homes for jobs in the cities, a strong uptick in the economic activity across the hinterland is significant. Still, much of will depend on monsoon staying its course. Also, there is a danger in the farm sector, especially in western, central and northeastern India of this year from the locust swarms. The Food and Agriculture Organization had also on June 27th updated the warn that India would need to remain on high alert through July for the possible arrival of swarms from the North Africa. The latest PMI data, a researcher from IHS Markit, also paints a less than promising outlook for manufacturing, which contracted again in the June, albeit after a softer pace. The June survey showed the sharp reduction in the output, newly orders and employments. Policymakers must not only contain a COVID-19 tearways away spread but also simultaneously keep economic momentum from sliding further. This is regarding the contraction of economy, how India must retain the twin focus on pandemic and also economy. That's the end of article discussion. If you are new to my channel, I request you all to subscribe to my channel so that you may not receive any further updates. This is my Facebook, Insta and YouTube channel, Wifi Study Karo. You can follow me there. You cannot miss any further updates. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.